Are you here for the Mobile World Congress?
Yes.
Okay. Where are you from?
Originally from India, but I've come from Paris, France.
Okay, perfect. So, first question. Do you consider that today executives carry out procrastination too often?
Can you repeat that question once
Yes,
again?
sure. Do you consider that today's executives carry out procrastination too often?
Up to a certain extent, yes.
Okay. What are the ideal and the realistic objectives at the moment of making contacts in an event of this magnitude, such as Mobile World Congress? What are the ideal and the realistic objectives?
Good question. From a startup perspective, it's different. From a big company perspective, it's entirely different. So usually big companies will have bigger stocks, which means more people can come in, so they have a much higher chances. But for startups, it's more of how well we can pre-plan the meetings. So unless and until if we don't have anything fixed before the event starts, at the event it becomes a bit difficult.
Okay, I understand. So, what do you think that has been the main functions more important of public relations in an event like this?
You get to see the ecosystem of any city. Like for example, I never knew that Barcelona had such a strong startup ecosystem.
Okay.
So this is something which is surprisingly well, and we saw some stands or some initiatives from the government agencies also promoting the idea.
Okay, so you have learned this.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay, so then give me please an attribute to be highlighted in relation to the stereotypes, in different stereotypes that you have seen here.
The idea of any such event is to network,
Yes.
right? But let's say if you are creating an investor club, you are creating this club, that club, and not everyone is allowed, then
Yeah.
there is no networking happening.
Okay.
Right? So that's like an oxymoron situation, that this is supposed to be a networking event, but you have like small clubs, which you are not allowed to do.
Okay.
So it defeats the whole purpose.
Like the privilege is very.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's more of a stereotype.
Okay.
Typical.
And finally, the last
Uh-huh.
question. Do you think that in particular the technology sector has attached stereotypes of gender and cultures? And which ones?
I think yes, I have a strong opinion in that, and I think we as tech startups or tech companies need to look at the quality of the work rather than the gender of the person. So that's definitely something, and that's my personal opinion. But we see a good amount of change coming in. Like, as in our company, we have 40% females, 60% males. So it's still better. And out of the 4 senior positions that we have in our company, 2 are males and 2 are females.
Okay.
So that's definitely something.
Okay. Hello. So now we are going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
First question. Do you consider that today's executives carry out procrastination too often?
They procrastinate too often. I guess it depends very much on the executive and on the industry, but I don't know if I can make a generalization on that subject.
Okay. Second question. What are the ideal and the realistic objectives at the moment of making contacts in an event of this magnitude?
So I guess preparation is important, knowing what your objectives are and what you're trying to get out of the event before it starts.
What do you think that has been the functions more important of public relations in an event like the Mobile World Congress?
So then again, I guess it depends very much on the company. So for us, because we're the corporate venture arm of a bank, so for us it's very important our positioning both in the media and within the ecosystem. So for us, yeah, PR plays an important role.
Okay. Give me please an attribute to be highlighted in relation to the stereotypes that you have been seen in this event.
Stereotypes?
Yeah.
In what sense?
In the sense that of public relations in an event like this, like for example the punctuality or some cultures.
Well, I'm not sure.
Bueno, si no es passem. No
Sí,
passa res.
passem.
And finally, the last question: do you think that in particular, the technology sector has attached stereotypes of gender and culture, and which ones?
Well, I guess to begin with, the programming, so the technology side of the startup sector is very male dominated, but I guess because in general men are more interested in technology, but I don't think it's driving a particular trend in that sense.
Vale. Pues ya está. Només era la
So, do you consider that today's executives carry out procrastination too often?
Yes, I think that the pattern year from now is very important because more startups contributed to developer of apps
What are the ideal and the realistic objectives at the moment of making contacts in an event of this magnitude? Sí, los objetivos más los ideales, ¿no? O sea, vienes aquí, ¿cuál es lo que quieres realmente buscar a nivel de contactos?
from now because it's and discovering the new technology of vision and helping apps a new world of technology.
What do you think that has been the most important function of public relations in an event like this?
I think that it's very important the contact with people.
En castellano es
o sea, lo más importante de relaciones públicas.
Sí. ¿Cuál ha sido la función más importante de, por ejemplo, el sector de las relaciones públicas de cada empresa en este evento?
No lo he visto
has-
este año, porque los otros años sí que en relaciones públicas sí que tenía pues objetos en plan, recuerda a nuestra empresa, hacemos esto, algo, más objetos quizás, pero que también es verdad que hacer tanto un merchandising implicaría pues un coste más elevado, ¿no? Pero sí que a lo mejor te darías a conocer dentro de pues más de 600 visitantes que entran aquí a la feria.
And la última, do you think that in particular the technology sector has attached stereotypes of gender and cultures? El sector que lo leo en inglés otra vez. Do you think that in particular the technology sector has attached stereotypes of gender and cultures?
Según de los estereotipos.
Sí.
Si el sector de la tecnología tiene implícitos algunos estereotipos de género, cultura.
Que tú hayas podido ver aquí.
No hay estereotipos. Ahora mismo los productos que están sacándose aquí en la feria son para todos. Da igual si eres mujer, si eres hombre, si vives en la China o si vives en la India, entonces cualquiera podría usarlo.
Y a nivel de trabajo, de implicaciones, bueno, en sus puestos y demás
Pues
dentro de la empresa.
lleva mucha tecnología, mucha programación detrás. Entonces hay factores aún que hay que pulir.
Okay, so do you consider that today's executives carry out procrastination too often?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Okay. Do you consider that today's executives carry out procrastination too often?
Procrastination. Ooh, that's a big question because I also procrastinate. Yes and no. I think they try not to show that people. They try not to invoke procrastination among their employees, but what they do is not really what they reflect sometimes. Like I can give you an example, like sometimes my boss who will take like 3 days to answer an email and I'm just like, well, why didn't you answer it like right then and then? And he's just like, well, I'm busy with other stuff usually, but it's like procrastination. So they want you to be more productive, but you can also see that in their line of work, they're not really doing the same. So it's always that thing where they need to like practice what they preach.
What are the ideal and the realistic objectives at the moment of making contacts in an event of this magnitude?
Sorry, repeat the question one more time.
What are the ideal and realistic objectives at the moment of making contacts in an event like this?
Under realistic.
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 Yeah.
I think an event like this, they always say like connectivity and helping startups grow, but can you imagine that you have to pay a lot of money to come into a certain place like this, and you really need to push yourself on how you can show other investors what you do. So an example would be like, I saw this really nice startup, I understood their message, but how they were branded themselves or how they were communicating, it was kind of horrible. And I think what like an event like this needs to kind of prepare other people who actually want to showcase their product. So like the message and the context has to be like, you have to give yourself time, you have to prepare, you have to actually like what do you call it, make an effort, but also make a mark, because there's 3,000 startups here. So how else can you do it? You have to make yourself unique, and I feel like that's not what 4 years from now is not really doing right now, but they can do better by talking to these startups.
What do you think that has been the function more important of public relations in an event like Mobile World Congress?
Public relations. I think the function number one is to include everyone in that one environment. I think when you're talking about 4 years from now, it's making sure that everyone has a platform to come and speak. So public relations brings that out a lot. And also it depends on how they use it. Like I think I also had a comment with one of the speakers today. It's like, you guys were talking about diversity, but in the panels there were only white males. So I'm just like, what's going on with that? So they also have to see, like, again, like I said in the beginning, what you see, you also have to say it, because if you're talking about diversity in the workplace, why are we only interviewing white Spanish males? That doesn't make any sense to me. And I think someone in PR needs to look that up again.
And can you give me please an attribute to be highlighted in relation to the stereotypes that they have?
The what?
The stereotypes.
The stereotypes. I think the biggest stereotype that I've seen in the past 2 days is women for tech. I know it was really the biggest stereotype, because you only involve you see the same women. That's like the biggest stereotype, and how like, oh, how can women be more into the tech? How can we help women be more in tech? And I'm like, well, why aren't we having men in this conversation? Because we know as women that we need to be in this conversation, but why aren't the guys here? And it's really sad. That's the stereotype that they're bringing out, because like the guys also in the panel are only women. So I'm like, I think for women for tech to be in the workplace, guys have to be in this conversation too. Otherwise, it's only always going to be women, and we're not going to get anywhere.
Okay, so the last one. Do you think that in particular the technology sector has attached stereotypes of gender and culture?
You just answered my question. Yes, I definitely do. And it's kind of sad. There was also statistics today, like women developers in Spain, in Barcelona alone, it's only 20,000. And people always say, where are these women? Where are they? But they don't look for them hard enough. Instead, we have conferences to talk about how they do not find us, but we're right here. So yes, of course, there's always a stereotype, and that always needs to change with their public relations. They need to start caring more.
Okay.
Hope that helps.